Hello, lovely learneds. Welcome back to A Life Learned. Today, I would like to share a few lessons I feel that I have learned in the last 10 years about trying to be in intimate relationships, relationships in general as well, I guess. Things I really wish I had known at 25, now being 35, and looking back going, really would have been nice to know that before doing all the things that I did. Um, but with a lot of trauma and attachment wounds, sometimes it can be hard to learn these things because it just wasn't information that our parents even had to give, right? So sometimes you live and learn, so to speak. That is very much the purpose of the channel, right? Hence ALifeLearned. So here we are. The biggest thing, the most prominent thing I want to share with anybody interested is just don't compromise yourself. And I know that's really confusing for some people who are like, what? But relationships are about compromise. Absolutely, yes, they are. The thing is not to compromise yourself, like your fundamental self and your needs. Compromise within wants, compromise within like navigating situations, even sometimes navigating needs to like whose needs get met first. Sure, there's compromise in that, but in the end, your needs still need to be met for it to be a balanced and stable relationship that's good for you long term. So yeah, just like the biggest thing is don't compromise and yourself, and by that I mean like your values or your beliefs that you came into the relationship with. Don't start changing those to try and fit what the other person thinks, because that can really quickly lead into like chopping pieces of yourself off and just like isolating and ostracizing parts of yourself to try and fit the person that you want to be with. I did that a lot in past relationships. My whole story was be whatever they wanted. That was what made me a good partner from my lessons growing up. It didn't matter who I was or what I needed or what I wanted. It was about meeting their needs and then just being happy with that, which is not balanced or stable. That's not fair. And in many ways, I changed the stories that I walked into the relationships with in order to try and make it work, in order to feel less guilty about the misalignments between us. I changed what I believed friendship should look like, and I cut it down and minimized it, and I changed what I believed love should look like. I like literally shattered my idea of love in order to try and make things work with some people. And so just don't do that to yourself, you know, like your ideas of love are valid. You have an idea of love that is based in how you feel about love, and your feelings are always valid. And that's another thing is like, don't ignore well, sorry, I skipped a few, but I'm like, don't let anyone talk you out of your feelings, because sometimes people will be like, well, that doesn't make sense that you feel that way. I don't understand. Maybe you won't even understand your feelings, but they don't need to make sense all the time. They're just our body giving us signals that something's not working for us, that something's not quite aligning sometimes. Don't ignore your feelings, and don't let someone tell you that they don't make sense. Like, I mean, again, more I mean that they're not valid. They might not make sense. They don't need to make sense to be valid. You just need to listen to them and like sit with them. And you know, sometimes we don't need to make sense of them so much as recognize when they're there and be present with them instead of ignoring and shoving them to try and make things work. And yeah, so back to what I was originally saying, in shattering my idea of what love was, I really shrank it down. And so that's where I'm like, don't compromise on what you believe love should look like. If the person that you're excited about and really enjoying being around is like gradually showing you a form of love that isn't covering all the bases of what you understand love to be, then notice that and, you know, talk to them and see if they've got room to meet you where you are and what you need in love. But also notice if that's not within their capacity. Maybe they try, but then they stop or they fall back and they're not quite able to do it, or they need continuous reminders. That can be strenuous on your mental health, and then just notice that, like, if someone is able to do it, they shouldn't need to be constantly, repeatedly reminded over and over and over and over for years and years. That's like putting all of the emotional work on you when it should be a balanced relationship where everybody's working to make it work. In that sense, don't live out of balance is one of my other big things, or stability. I tolerate a lot of abusive behaviors because I grew up with them, and I just thought it was normal for everybody to yell when they were mad. It's not. You can be upset. It makes sense to be upset. It makes sense to have like difficult emotions and to need to work through difficult conversations. Yelling is not acceptable though. And like basically any kind of dysregulated emotion while you're in conflict is something that the other person really needs to manage. And if they put it on you that like the way you're acting makes them do that, that's not fair and that's not healthy. That's not stable. Conflict is going to happen. How a person manages that conflict is very important. And again, you need to notice how that's sitting with you. And if it doesn't sit right, you need to listen to that, because ignoring it for the good times is how you end up in a really tricky situation where there's less and less good times and more of these difficult emotional situations where you're compromising what you think is fair or comfortable for you on the simple fact of trying to make it work. Like, that's not a thing you compromise, I guess is what I'm saying. Balance and stability is essential for long-term wellness. And in that sense, if you do find misalignments in what they consider balance and what you consider balance, or what they consider stability and how they consider conflict resolution, or how they think conflict should go, etc., that's where I'm like, don't compromise and don't blame yourself for those misalignments. They're not necessarily wrong. Like, they have a different view of how things should go in a relationship. People are different. That's the epitome of humanity. But blaming yourself for that misalignment and being like, oh, well, if I just change what I believe about love, about friendship, about my feelings and how conflict is sitting with me, and etc., then it'll work. It's not actually working. You're shrinking yourself. You're changing yourself. You're compromising the fundamental self, and like bridging a gap that is a misalignment where like someone can't meet you where you are, and that's not your fault that they aren't able to meet you. I guess it can be really sad when you're like, but I'm so excited about this person. If I can just bridge this gap, everything will be fine. The thing is that like long-term relationships are based on both people working on that. Compromise is not just from one side, I guess is the one thing that's like really key. A lot of people end up feeling like, oh, if I just compromise my needs, or like this thing or that thing, but they don't notice that it's actually just them shrinking and changing their needs, and the other person maybe not necessarily doing the same amount of work in their direction. Sometimes they do, and that's the key as well, is to notice when your partner is like compromising and like not having healthy boundaries for themselves and like overextending themselves, because that's going to burn them out and build resentment as well. So it's like, this is something you have to track for yourself and notice for someone else, because again, that's out of balance if they're doing that. So the main thing to keep in mind when you see your partner interacting in the world, and like you're learning, who they are, you've only just started to really get close to them, it's been, a few months. You really want to notice how they treat people in their life that they've had for a long time, had around, like their family especially. Like, how do they act towards them, and how does their family act towards them? Like, is it a balanced relationship or not? A lot of people, like, their family's really awful to them. That's my case. And so like I'm not around my family very much, and when I am around them I get pretty triggered. And so I have been keeping distance lately, but just noticing like how a person is towards their family can be key to noticing their capacity, in conflict and in good situations as well, if they have a strong bond with their family. Also noticing how they treat like friends and I guess just like anyone that they interact with in public, because like the interesting thing about the first few months of a relationship, or as it extends further, is like it's really easy to put on your best face and like put in as much energy as you like and more in the beginning, because you know it's like doing the burn for an essay or for I'm thinking of being back in school when I was doing tests, and I was just like, I would, you know, wasn't exactly smart, but I'd stay up all night to study to get the information I needed just for that test, right? And so it's kind of, I guess it could kind of be like love bombing without all the aftermath, but it's just like, you know, putting in all that energy at first to build the initial commitment and connection and attachment, and then like kind of burning out because you weren't balanced about your initial input, and then it just like kind of falls off. And so in that way, by watching the way that they treat other people in public, in long-term relationships, in family, you can see how they're going to treat you when things get more difficult, and what their capacity is for people on a day-to-day basis when they're not super excited about them and like putting in that excessive energy to build a new attachment. And then in that sense, it is very important to realize that the person that you're choosing to attach with and build this connection with, as you introduce them to more people in your life that matter to you, those people are going to see that person as a reflection of you, which like I don't personally think is fair. Like I really try to separate my relationships and like keep boundaries where it's like I try to not let them bleed. It's not perfect, but I try. Where it's like you and how you treat me is our relationship, not your relationship with them with me. If I'm unhappy with them, I'll deal with them, not you, and like blame it on you, right? Try. We're not all perfect, but lots of people, at least in Western countries, you know, I'm here in Canada, they see your partner as a reflection of you. They see them as a person that you chose to be with because you thought that they have good ideas, because you think that they're smart, because you think that they're worthy of your time and energy and commitment and dedication and brain and love. And so in that way, they're like, any ideas that this person has and reflects, it reflects on you. So if they have good ideas, awesome. But if they are not a very thoughtful person and they kind of maybe act without thinking sometimes, that also reflects on you. And the way they treat people is going to reflect on you as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. And so with that, the final piece is the idea of the longer you stay on a train, the harder it is to get off and return back to your original station. That the longer you stay in a relationship as you're seeing misalignments and being unmet, and red flags is what some people will be negative about it, but it's just like little points where things don't quite align and you're like, oh well, we can work on that, oh well, we can work on that, and oh well, we can work on that. But maybe you're not noticing how they treat other people, you're not noticing that you don't agree with the decisions they make, or you're not paying attention to how there's moments where you don't feel heard, because they're just these little moments in the beginning, and you're like, well, that's okay, we can work on that, I can talk to them about that. Relationships are about compromise and talking things out. They absolutely are. But with every new step you take in adding them to your life and incorporating them into your memories and into your family, like introducing them to your friends, introducing them to your routines, like bringing them to your workplace, whatever, all of that is like another stop in the ride that you're going to have to go back and reverse if it doesn't work out. And so it's just something to keep in mind in terms of the emotional investment that you're dealing with, especially when meeting family, is like, you know, you start those relationships and then it doesn't work out, and now you have to figure out, like, how do I want to manage this relationship when the connection that started the relationship is no longer there, or no longer what it was. And that's the hard thing when it comes to building relationships and trying to be balanced about like how fast or slow you introduce a person into your life. Some people have different ideas of what is too fast or too slow. You need to decide for yourself what that is and not let the person you're with or your friends or anyone tell you what is too fast or too slow, right? And you need to just remember as you're going along, like, am I ready to manage to damage control this situation with these new relationships if the first one, the foundational one, doesn't work out? And so final piece, just something I've really learned, and this has been across the board with everybody, friendships, romances, whatever, it takes at least a year to really see a person. Like, no matter how much you spend time with them, spend every single day, 365 days, which most people don't. We're busy. But if you did, it would take that much for you to actually like really see them and be like, oh, okay, now I see where we fit, where we don't, what I like, what I don't, whether we're good, whether this is like, 100% going to work long term. Yeah, it takes a full year from my experience to really see that, because there's just so much nuance in a person, in their unique experiences, in their unique traumas, in their relationships, in their beliefs, in their values, and in the way that all comes out in their behaviors and their choices. And but yeah, just like, even that's something I feel like I knew at 25, is just it takes a good year to really get to know a person. So it's something to keep in mind, again, as you move along that train to each new stop of more and more commitment and building more and more relationships that are intermeshed with this new relationship, is realizing that's a lot to manage if it doesn't work out and you realize, 12 stops in, 12 months, that this isn't quite right for you. That's where I really struggled, because once I was that far into it, I was like, well, we've committed. We've put this much energy in, and I was 100% sunk cost theory, like, sunk cost theory to the detriment, where I was like, well, I love them. I really like them. Like, I still really want the best for them. And I've put so much into this, like, oh, I'll just change this, and I'll just stop believing that, and I'll just chop this off and chop that off. Do whatever I have to be what they need, because then it'll work. I didn't recognize that I was kind of dying inside in the process. And then I was going through therapy, which was just making it very apparent to me that one of the things that was really affecting my struggles with addiction and my struggles with anxiety and other things was the incredible amount of misalignment I was having in my fundamental closest relationship. And it was too much for me. So that's the key, is to notice for yourself when it's too much, and don't let anybody else tell you what that line is. And don't be afraid to pull out at 1 year or 2 years or 10 years if you're finally realizing it, because sunk cost theory is not your friend. Yes, maybe you've put 20 years into this relationship, but if you're finally seeing that at no point have they ever really met you where you're at and aligned with you and cared for your values or like what matters to you, you've got 20 years ahead that you could enjoy finding people in your life. It doesn't have to be romance, it can be friendship, it can be lots of different types of connections where, it's not about sex and intimacy or that type of intimacy. It's about a different type of intimacy where you just care about each other, and you can find those people. You don't need someone who makes you feel like poop or unworthy because you're trying to find reason for why it's not working. Sometimes we just don't align, and sometimes it takes us 5 months, a year, 5 years, 20 years to realize it. But it's okay to make the change once you realize it. It's scary, it's hard. You need supports, don't do it alone. Reach out to friends. But just know that when you notice it, you're not a bad person, they're not a bad person. It's just noticing what you want, what you came into the relationship needing, and that's not being met, and it's okay to recognize that and remove yourself from a situation that isn't what you thought it was originally. That's all. Anyways, I've rambled. This went too long. I didn't mean for it to go this long. I apologize. But please, by all means, share in the comments your relationship experiences, any relationship lessons that you've had, and would share. What do you wish you knew at 25, or 10 years ago, whatever age you are? What do you wish you knew 10 years ago, when you were trying to manage relationships? I'd love to hear your guys' feedback. And as always, please join me again next week, or tomorrow, for example, because I'll be streaming, where I try again to share a little something I've learned or experienced in life.